Sarah Martinez walked through the glass doors of Riverside High School with her worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder. Her family had moved to this small coastal town 3 weeks ago, and she was still trying to fit into her new life as a regular teenager. The morning sun streamed through the windows as students rushed past her, chattering about weekend plans and upcoming tests. At 17, Sarah looked like any other high school student. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a plain blue sweater. What nobody knew was that just 6 months ago, she had been Petty Officer Martinez, one of the youngest members ever to complete Navy SEAL training. Her father's injury and medical discharge had brought their family back to civilian life, and Sarah was determined to blend in. "Hey, new girl!" a voice called out behind her. Sarah turned to see 3 students approaching. The leader was a tall, blonde girl named Jessica, who seemed to run the school's social hierarchy. Behind her were 2 other girls, both wearing expensive clothes and matching smirks. "I heard you're from some military family," Jessica said, looking Sarah up and down. "Must be tough going from base to base, never really having friends." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "It's fine. I'm used to adapting." "Well, you should know how things work here," Jessica continued, stepping closer. "Some people belong and others don't." The hallway was getting more crowded as students headed to their first classes. Sarah noticed how other kids seemed to avoid this group, giving them plenty of space. She could read the social dynamics easily. Jessica and her friends were bullies who controlled their territory through intimidation. "I'm just trying to get to class," Sarah said quietly. "Oh, but we're not done talking," Jessica replied, blocking Sarah's path. "You see, there are rules here. New kids need to understand their place." Sarah's military training screamed at her to assess the situation. 3 opponents, corridor with limited exits, multiple witnesses who wouldn't intervene. But she wasn't Petty Officer Martinez anymore. She was just Sarah, trying to be a normal teenager. "What kind of rules?" Sarah asked, though she already knew where this was heading. "Well, first, you don't sit at certain tables during lunch. Second, you don't talk to certain boys. And third," Jessica's smile turned cold, "you show respect to people who've earned it." One of Jessica's friends, a redhead named Amber, giggled. "Maybe she needs a demonstration of how respect works around here." Sarah felt her muscles tense involuntarily. In SEAL training, she had learned to remain calm under pressure, to think 3 steps ahead of any threat. But here, surrounded by teenagers instead of enemy combatants, the rules were completely different. "I don't want any trouble," Sarah said, taking a small step backward. "Too bad," Jessica replied. "Trouble seems to follow military brats around." The comment stung, but Sarah kept her face blank. She thought about her father, recovering from injuries he'd sustained protecting his unit overseas. She thought about her mother, working double shifts at the local hospital to support their family. They had sacrificed so much for her to have a normal life. "Meet us after school by the old gym entrance," Jessica commanded. "We need to finish this conversation properly." "And if I don't show up?" Sarah asked. "Then we'll find you." The third girl, named Chloe, spoke for the first time. "Trust me, you don't want us to come looking." The warning bell rang and students began hurrying to their classrooms. Jessica and her group walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the hallway. She watched them go, noting their confident stride, the way other students moved out of their way. During her morning classes, Sarah tried to focus on algebra and English literature, but her mind kept drifting to the confrontation. In her previous life, threats were handled directly and decisively. Here, she had to navigate teenage politics and social hierarchies that seemed just as dangerous in their own way. At lunch, Sarah sat alone at a table near the window, picking at a sandwich while observing the cafeteria dynamics. Jessica and her friends held court at a large table in the center, surrounded by wannabes and hangers-on. Occasionally, Jessica would look in Sarah's direction and smile coldly. "You're the new girl, right?" Sarah looked up to see a boy with kind eyes and messy brown hair. He was holding a lunch tray and seemed genuinely friendly. "Yeah, I'm Sarah." "I'm Mike. Mind if I sit? You look like you could use some company." Sarah gestured to the empty chair across from her. Mike sat down and immediately started talking about teachers, classes, and the upcoming football game. His easy conversation was a relief after the morning's tension. "I heard Jessica gave you the welcoming committee treatment," Mike said, lowering his voice. "Word travels fast around here." "She's been queen bee since middle school," Mike explained. "Most people just avoid her, but she doesn't like being ignored." "What would happen if someone stood up to her?" Mike looked surprised. "Nobody really does. Her dad's on the school board, and she knows how to make life miserable for people who cross her." Sarah nodded, filing away this information. "In the military, you learn to understand command structures and how to work within them. High school apparently had its own version of chain of command." The rest of the day passed slowly. Teachers welcomed Sarah warmly, classmates were polite but distant, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows through classroom windows. But as the final bell approached, Sarah felt her training kicking in. She was walking into a potential conflict situation, and every instinct told her to prepare. After school, Sarah made her way to the old gym entrance as instructed. The area was deserted except for Jessica and her two friends, who were waiting by a side door that led to a narrow hallway lined with old lockers. "Good, you came," Jessica said. "Shows you can follow instructions." "What do you want?" Sarah asked directly. "We want to make sure you understand how things work," Jessica replied, moving closer. "You're going to learn your place, and you're going to like it." Amber and Chloe moved to flank Sarah, cutting off her retreat path. The hallway was empty, with no teachers or other students around. Sarah realized they had chosen this location carefully. "Here's what's going to happen," Jessica continued. "You're going to do our homework for the next month. You're going to stay away from anyone we tell you to avoid, and you're going to remember that we run this school." "And if I refuse?" Sarah asked, though she was already calculating distances, exits, and tactical options. "Then we'll make sure everyone knows what a freak you are," Jessica said. "Military brat with no friends, no life, nothing." Sarah felt something shift inside her. These girls had no idea what real hardship looked like. They had no concept of sacrifice, of dedication, of earning respect through blood, sweat, and determination. They were bullies picking on someone they saw as weak and alone. "You know what?" Sarah said quietly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Jessica replied, stepping even closer, "is you thinking you have a choice in this matter." That's when Jessica made her mistake. She reached out to shove Sarah backward, expecting the new girl to stumble and cower like all the others. Instead, Sarah's body moved with fluid precision. She caught Jessica's wrist, rotated slightly, and suddenly Jessica was on the ground, staring up in shock. The movement had been so fast and smooth that it looked almost effortless. "What the hell?" Amber gasped, taking a step backward. Sarah straightened up, and for the first time since arriving at this school, she let her real self show through. Her posture changed, becoming straighter and more alert. Her eyes grew sharp and focused. The quiet, nervous new girl disappeared, replaced by someone who radiated competence and control. "Let me introduce myself properly," Sarah said, her voice calm and steady. "My name is Sarah Martinez. Until 6 months ago, I was Petty Officer Martinez, United States Navy SEALs." The three girls stared at her in complete silence. "I've completed Hell Week, Advanced Combat Training, and Underwater Demolition School," Sarah continued. I've trained with Marines, Army Rangers, and Special Forces units from 3 different countries. I can disarm multiple opponents, survive in hostile environments, and neutralize threats without breaking a sweat. Jessica was still on the ground, holding her wrist and looking up with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "But you know what the hardest part of my training was?" Sarah asked, crouching down to Jessica's level. "Learning restraint. Learning when not to use what I know." She stood up and looked at all 3 girls. "I came here wanting to be normal, to fit in, to make friends and worry about homework instead of life and death situations. You could have been part of that. Instead, you decided to try and intimidate someone you knew nothing about." Chloe found her voice first. "You're lying. There's no way you're actually a SEAL." Sarah smiled slightly and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her photos until she found what she was looking for, then held it up for them to see. The image showed Sarah in full military gear, standing with her unit after a training exercise. She looked exactly the same, just wearing combat boots instead of sneakers. "Believe it or not," Sarah said, "that's up to you." Jessica finally managed to get to her feet, still staring at Sarah like she was seeing her for the first time. "Here's what's going to happen," Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority she had learned in the military. "You're going to leave me alone. You're going to stop bullying other students. And you're going to think very carefully about what it means to show real respect." "You can't just threaten us," Amber said, though her voice was shaking. "I'm not threatening anyone," Sarah replied. "I'm giving you information so you can make informed decisions. The same way I had to make decisions when people much more dangerous than you tried to intimidate me." She picked up her backpack and looked at each of them in turn. "I've spent months learning to be a regular teenager. You've just reminded me that some lessons from my previous life still apply. Real strength isn't about picking on people you think are weaker than you. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves." Sarah started walking away, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Jessica? Next time you want to grab someone, you might want to make sure they don't know 17 different ways to put you on the ground." The next morning, Sarah arrived at school to find something unexpected waiting for her. Word had spread overnight, and she could feel the change in atmosphere immediately. Students who had ignored her the day before now watched her with curiosity and respect. Mike found her at her locker, grinning widely. "Is it true?" he asked. "Are you really a Navy SEAL?" "Former Navy SEAL," Sarah corrected. "I'm just a student now." "That's amazing," Mike said. "I heard Jessica's been telling everyone she slipped and fell, but people saw her wrist was all red." Sarah frowned. "I didn't want this to get out. I was trying to keep my background private." "Are you kidding? This is the coolest thing that's ever happened at this school," Mike said. "Do you know how many kids Jessica and her crew have picked on over the years? You're like a superhero to them right now." Throughout the day, Sarah noticed the changes. Students approached her with respect rather than curiosity. Teachers seemed more engaged when she participated in class discussions. Even the school principal, Dr. Harrison, asked her to stop by his office. "Miss Martinez," Dr. Harrison said as she entered his office, "I understand there was an incident yesterday after school." Sarah sat down carefully. "Yes, sir. I hope no one got hurt." "From what I hear, you handled yourself with remarkable restraint," Dr. Harrison said. "I also understand you have quite an impressive background." "I was hoping to keep that private, sir." Dr. Harrison leaned back in his chair. "I've spent 20 years in education, Miss Martinez. I've seen every kind of student, every kind of problem. What I haven't seen is someone with your unique qualifications choosing to solve problems peacefully." "Violence should always be the last option," Sarah said. "That's one of the first things they teach you in the military." "Would you be interested in helping us with a project?" Dr. Harrison asked. "We've been trying to develop a peer mediation program, something to help students resolve conflicts before they escalate. Your experience could be invaluable." Sarah thought about it. In the SEALs, leadership meant taking responsibility for your team, for the mission, for the people around you. Maybe her unique background could serve a different kind of mission here. "I'd be honored to help," she said. That afternoon, Sarah found herself in an unexpected situation. A group of younger students approached her during lunch, led by a quiet girl named Emma who looked nervous. "Sarah," Emma said hesitantly, "could we talk to you about something?" "Of course. What's going on?" Emma glanced around nervously. "There are some 8th graders who've been bothering us, taking our lunch money, pushing us around. We heard what happened with Jessica, and we wondered if maybe you could help." Sarah studied the group. They were clearly scared, looking to her as some kind of savior. This was exactly what she had wanted to avoid, being seen as the military girl who solved problems with force. "Tell me about what's been happening," Sarah said, sitting down so she was at their eye level. For the next 20 minutes, she listened as they described a pattern of bullying from older students. The tactics were familiar: intimidation, isolation, escalating demands. But these kids were looking for protection, not empowerment. "Here's what we're going to do," Sarah said finally. "I'm going to teach you some things. Not fighting, that's not what this is about. I'm going to teach you confidence, awareness, and how to de-escalate situations before they get out of hand." "You mean like self-defense?" one of the boys asked hopefully. "I mean like self-respect," Sarah replied. "The best fight is the one you never have to fight." Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself becoming an unexpected leader at Riverside High. She started informal sessions during lunch breaks, teaching younger students how to carry themselves with confidence, how to recognize potentially dangerous situations, and how to seek help when they needed it. Dr. Harrison's peer mediation program took off, with Sarah training other students to serve as neutral parties in conflicts. The bullying incidents that had been common throughout the school began to decrease dramatically. Jessica and her friends kept their distance, but Sarah noticed other changes in them too. Without their usual targets, too afraid to report them, they seemed lost, unsure how to interact with their classmates. Eventually, Amber approached Sarah. "I wanted to apologize," Amber said quietly, "for what we did. It was wrong." "Thank you," Sarah said. "That means a lot." "Can I ask you something?" Amber continued. "How do you do it? How do you make people respect you without scaring them?" Sarah thought about the question. Respect isn't something you take. It's something you earn. You earn it by treating other people with dignity, by standing up for what's right, and by being someone others can count on. But you're so strong. You could make anyone do what you want. "Strength isn't about making people do what you want," Sarah explained. "It's about protecting people who need protection and helping people become stronger themselves." As the semester progressed, Sarah watched Jessica's group slowly change. Chloe joined the peer mediation program. Jessica started tutoring younger students in math. Amber began eating lunch with different groups, making genuine friends instead of followers. One day, Mike approached Sarah with exciting news. "The town council wants to meet with you," he said. "They heard about what you've been doing at school, and they want to discuss starting a community program." "What kind of program?" "Self-defense classes for women, conflict resolution training for local businesses, maybe even a youth leadership program," Mike explained. "They think your background could help the whole community." Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the call to service, the opportunity to make a real difference. But this time, it wasn't about military missions or combat operations. It was about building something positive, helping people become their best selves. That evening, Sarah called her father to discuss the opportunity. "I'm proud of you," he said over the phone. "You found a way to serve without wearing the uniform." "I miss it sometimes," Sarah admitted. "The clarity of the mission, the team, the sense of purpose." "Purpose doesn't come from the uniform," her father replied. It comes from what you choose to do with your abilities. Sounds like you found a pretty important mission right where you are." 3 months after the hallway confrontation, Sarah stood in front of the Riverside Community Center, watching as the first class of her youth leadership program arrived. Among the participants were Emma and her friends, Mike, several former troublemakers who had turned their lives around, and even Amber. Dr. A. Harrison had asked her to speak at the school assembly about the changes they'd seen since the program started. Bullying incidents were down 70%, student participation in activities was up, and test scores had improved across the board. "When I arrived here," Sarah told the assembly, "I thought I was leaving my old life behind. I thought being normal meant forgetting everything I'd learned in the military." She looked out at the sea of faces, seeing students who now walked with confidence, who looked out for each other, who had learned to resolve conflicts with words instead of fists. "But I learned that the best parts of that training, the discipline, the leadership, the commitment to protecting others, those things don't belong to any one profession. They belong to anyone willing to step up and make their community better." After the assembly, Jessica approached Sarah for the first time since their confrontation. "I wanted to thank you," Jessica said, "for not completely destroying me that day." "That was never the goal," Sarah replied. "I know that now. But back then, I thought power meant making other people afraid. You showed me what real strength looks like." Jessica paused, then continued. "I'm applying to the Air Force Academy. My grades are finally good enough, and I want to learn to serve something bigger than myself." Sarah smiled. "They'll be lucky to have you." As the school year ended, Sarah realized that her mission had evolved. She was no longer trying to blend in or hide her background. Instead, she had found a way to use her unique skills to make a lasting impact on her new community. The girl who had been trapped in the hallway by bullies had become the leader who helped others find their own strength. The Navy SEAL who had tried to disappear into civilian life had discovered that service takes many forms. Standing in the graduation crowd, watching students she had mentored receive their diplomas, Sarah understood that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with patience, wisdom, and the courage to help others become better than they thought possible. Her father had been right. Purpose didn't come from the uniform. It came from choosing to use your abilities to lift others up, to protect those who needed protection, and to build something better than what you found. Sarah Martinez, former Navy SEAL and current high school student, had completed her most important mission yet.